And as KXEL Live and Local continues, we're joined via Zoom by Michael Swanger. Mr. Swanger is the owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal, the excellent magazine which comes out 6 times a year, iowahistoryjournal.com. Issue 3 for this year, May-June issue, is just out. Mr. Swanger, thank you so much for the time.
Always a pleasure, Jeff. I always enjoy speaking to someone who's so knowledgeable about Iowa history. Thanks for having me back on your show.
Well, you're very kind to say that, and you're very kind to allow me to write for this magazine. This issue, however, has some other very fine authors, and one thing that's really interesting to me is this is Iowa 180 year. The statehood was 1846. That's a fair amount of time after the American Revolution, but yet, in typical Iowa History Journal fashion, you have found ways to connect Iowa to the American Revolution. That's the cover story. Brightly colored America 250 logo on the front.
Well, it was one of those things where, as we all know, the semi-quincentennial is approaching on July 4th. And it was something I'd had in the back of my mind for a while. And we worked with the State Historical Society of Iowa over the years, and they sometimes contribute stories to us, and I know that they have a tremendous archive of items that not everyone has access to. And so I thought they were kind of the perfect folks to call up and ask for some help on this one. And fortunately, Valerie Van Kooten and her staff responded in kind and were very enthusiastic about helping us and wrote a terrific kind of a 3-section cover story for us, because we wanted to get in front of everything that's going to take place on July 4th in our May-June issue. Now, I know a lot of Iowans think about what happens on the 4th of July. It's traditionally the day in which we celebrate our nation's founding. But this is an event that's so monumental in terms of the 250th anniversary that there are just numerous events taking place throughout the course of the year. So we want to remind Iowans that you don't have to just celebrate the 250th anniversary on the 4th of July, that there are many events taking place throughout the year, and there are many things that you can do to celebrate that throughout the year, places you can visit. There's no way you could possibly cram it all into one day. Besides, we're busy grilling out and hanging out with family and friends and neighbors and watching fireworks. So you're not going to get too much done that day anyway. You want to just relax and have fun. But there are a lot of fun ways to celebrate the semi-quincentennial, Jeff. And this is I thought this cover story would be a way to inform Iowans on how to do that.
And there are some little known facts about Iowa and the America 250 anniversary, including the fact that the state has a copy of the Declaration of Independence itself.
That's right. That's one of the portions or sections of our cover story, Jeff, written by Anthony John. There's an official copy of the Declaration of Independence that was created by printer William Stone. It was donated to the state in 1947 by an Iowan whose descendant, Matthew Thornton, was the last original signer of the document. So while the printing plate used for this print copy dates back to like the 1823, the copy itself was made in 1843, and it was only made once, and it was given away to the signer. So it's a very rare copy. Fortunately, and the state has held it in its archives since 1947. It's going to be on display at the State Historical Buildings Research Center in Des Moines, starting June 3rd, I believe, through August 1st. And so that's a rare item that we have. Who would have thought the descendant actually lived in Altoona? And in 1947, she thought the best place to store it would be in the state's archives. And I think she made a wise decision so that all Iowans can visit it and see it if they choose to do so.
Something else that I was not aware of, there are various monuments on the State House grounds, and they're all very interesting and distinctive. I was not aware that for the past quarter century or so, there's been a Revolutionary War monument on the state capitol grounds in Des Moines. Tell us about that.
You know, a few years ago when I was researching a story about the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, I kind of stumbled on it myself, Jeff, and started taking pictures of it then. Again, put this on my list of things to do. And the Revolutionary War Monument was placed at the Iowa State House grounds in 2002. There are 41 known Revolutionary War veterans buried in Iowa, including the only Black Revolutionary War veteran buried west of the Mississippi, and his name was Cato Meade. And we also have a portion of our story dedicated to him. But the monument itself just added the 41st name last summer. There was a ceremony held by the Sons of the American Revolution, and the 41st name added was a gentleman named Matron Matthew Elmore, and that was added last summer. And so there was a gathering for that. We have a photo of the gathering, and then we have some of the other people who are on that monument. Spoiler alert, in our July-August issue, I'm working on it as we speak. I'm going to have just a story alone about that monument and the 41 people who are honored there. There's also stones that mark all the 13 original colonies there. It's a beautiful display. If you ever get a chance, if you're in Des Moines and you visit the State House grounds, I would highly recommend it, especially this year.
Cover story in the current issue of Iowa History Journal is tied to Iowa's historical connections to the American Revolution in celebration of the semi-quincentennial. How long did it take you to learn how to pronounce that? Because it took me a little bit of a while to figure it out.
Well, if it took you a while, you can only imagine how long it took me to figure it out.
Oh, sure.
I'm not a professional broadcaster, so
yeah, well, that's a low bar, my friend. But the thing that's fascinating is you look at all of this, and again, the number of Revolutionary War veterans buried in Iowa, many of them obviously migrated to the West, but again, the passage of time being what it is, I'm just struck that there are that many who are buried here that made their way far enough west over the course of that time that this was their final resting place.
You know, what occurred to me the other day, Jeff, is this. I think the older that we get, the more we appreciate the context of time. Obviously, when you're a kid, you think 70 years is just an immense amount of time. Well, as you get older, that 70 years is really a blink of an eye in that regard. And what we don't think about is that it was only 70 years between July 4th, 1776, the signing and adoption of the Declaration of Independence, and Iowa's statehood. So that's only one lifetime. So we don't think about the colonists and folks who moved west, but we know that many of them did even before the war. And so I guess we shouldn't be surprised that they made it this far, but it is surprising. And I think this goes back to one of the things we've talked about with Iowa history in general, and certainly with IHJ. I hear the remark all the time that, when folks read the magazine, wow, I didn't know that about Iowa. I guarantee that's going to be the reaction when they read this cover story. And that memorial that we just mentioned isn't the only one. I mean, there are many throughout the state. In cemeteries, we have another story about researching Iowa's revolutionary women and the big role that the Daughters of the American Revolution play. They recently just erected a marker at Woodland Cemetery in Des Moines, which is a historic cemetery as well. Actually, that was 2 years ago they did that, in recognizing some of the Revolutionary War patriots who are buried there. So there are physical examples of our connection to that war throughout the state and our cemeteries.
It is also something that is covered in Mr. Swanger's Publisher's Perspective, ways that you can uniquely mark the American 250th. Michael Swanger is owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal, the May-June issue with America 250 Iowa on the cover. Just out. I saw it at the Barnes & Noble in Waterloo the other day, right there in the front row of the Iowa section. Thank you very much. But to make darn sure that you get it, subscribe, iowahistoryjournal.com. There's also a list there of all of the various places, many of the places where you can pick up that second and third copy in addition. Last issue, that would have been the March-April issue, the legendary cartoonist and conservationist Ding Darling graced the cover, and that was part one of a two-part story, which, again, is concluded in the current issue. And you focused on one aspect of his life one time. Now you're looking at some of the other, perhaps lesser-known aspects of Ding Darling's life.
I think so. His role in conservation, I think, might be overlooked by those who are just familiar with the fact that he gained so much attention as an editorial cartoonist for the Des Moines Register, having won two Pulitzer Prizes. And I think you said this the last time we visited, Jeff, and you kind of nailed it, saying for anyone to be successful in one career is amazing, let alone two. And I think that speaks volumes about Ding, what you said, because it's true. He is the second part of our series, written by Don Doxey, is about Ding's conservation efforts, and you could argue that the conservation movement in the U.S. owes much to him. He spent most of his final years lobbying on behalf of the preservation of wildlife and natural resources. One of the biggest ways he did that was he was the first director of what became to be known as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He was the father of the National Wildlife Federation, and he designed the first duck stamp for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1934. That's just a tip of the iceberg. He used a lot of the money that he made over the years to personally fund conservation efforts, including those in Iowa and his other home in Florida, where there's a refuge in his name as well.
By total coincidence, several years ago now, pre-hurricane, one of the hurricanes that came through Sanibel Island in Florida, we were driving along and I saw the Ding Darling Preserve, and it jumped out at me because I knew the name Ding Darling, but of course I had no idea that he was, I knew a bit about the duck stamp and the conservationist background. I had no idea about the naming of a preserve for him in Florida. And again, you can see different forms of artwork, in fact. The Register cartoons that he did had a certain style. They're distinctive. The duck stamp, very different form of artwork, and yet just as distinctive.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you made it. And after we published our March April issue, coincidentally, a good friend of mine, he and his wife were on vacation in Florida. And after they read the story, they realized they were just a couple miles away. So it motivated them to visit as well. I have yet to make it there. I would love to see. They sent me a few pictures, so I have a little bit of an idea of what's there. But you're right. I mean, he was so talented. He had definitely had a style, his cartoon style. I think they were highly recognizable. But then the duck stamp looks different. And you know, it's of course back then a lot of his cartoons were black and white for the newspaper, and this is in full color. And now when you think about just the legacy of the duck stamps alone, it's quite an artistic feat for someone to be asked to draw that stamp still today. And it all started because of a guy who grew up in Iowa and lived here and had a great appreciation for the conservation movement.
This is the second part of a two-part series authored by the great writer Don Doxey. And if somebody, thought, oh gosh, I missed the first part, I wish there was a way, see what we're doing here? I wish there was a way that I could still get a copy of the magazine with part one so that I don't miss any of the story. Oh, if only there were such a way.
All you have to do is visit iowahistoryjournal.com or give us a call. Happy to get you set up with that issue. We keep a limited supply on hand. Our back issues are very popular and they're very collectible, especially from our early years. Our first 2 years are sold out. So I always encourage people to pick them up while they can, while they're moderately priced. And basically, we sell our back issues for the newsstand price.
iowahistoryjournal.com is the website, so you can order any of the back issues that are still available, including the one with the part one of the two-part cover story from the last issue on Ding Darling, part two in the current issue. Michael Swanger of Iowa History Journal joins us for a few minutes more. Tell us who Samuel Byers is. It's a fascinating story that graces the pages of the magazine this month as well.
Well, in short, Samuel was a Civil War soldier and poet who wrote Sherman's March to the Sea and the Song of Iowa. And the story is written by a gentleman named, he's a farmer actually, named Norman Van Mersbergen. He's a member, he and his wife Vicky, of the Ottumwa Civil War Roundtable, which I've presented a couple times too. And the last time I was there to speak with them, they pitched this story to me. Now, the name was familiar to me, but I didn't know the depth of his service or the contributions that he made, not only to the war, but just to the arts in general, as a poet, as a songwriter. And I think one of the most interesting aspects of this story is that he wrote Sherman's March to the Sea while he was a POW in a Confederate camp. And he scribbled it on paper. A fellow inmate who had lost a portion of his leg and had a wooden prosthesis smuggled it out in that hollowed out wooden leg. And eventually it made its way to a gentleman named General William Sherman, who Byers became friends with, and including after the war. And if you go visit Hoyt Sherman Place in Des Moines today, you'll find the Samuel Byers room in there, where after he died, he had it set up that he bequeathed his collection of furniture and a bunch of other memorabilia and items and artifacts to Hoyt Sherman Place, and you can learn more about him just by visiting that place as well.
So many things in each issue, 6 per year. IowaHistoryJournal.com, the website, or available at all manner of newsstands, grocery stores, etc. And in addition, in this current issue, the third one for the year, May, June, the dates on the cover, Ruth Suko, we've talked about her in the past on this program. Arvid Huseman laments that Sundays aren't Sundays anymore, and so much more, including the IHJ quiz, which is, don't cheat. The answers are in the issue, but you can't cheat. You have to take the quiz and do it upright, and let's see how you do. All of that and more. Iowa History Journal. Subscribe at iowahistoryjournal.com, and then pick up 2 and 3 extra copies at the newsstand to send to friends. Mr. Swanger, it is always a privilege. Great information as per custom. We'll do this again for the next issue, if not before.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jeff.
This is where Iowa comes to talk. News Talk 1540, KXEL.